Hey guys, Rich from Rich Mid Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. And welcome to a very special edition of the show today. I'm joined by two, I don't want to use the word heavyweights because one of them can get a little bit particular about his size, but two big players in the game of Marvel Crisis Protocol, two fantastic content creators, two fantastic players, but more importantly, two absolutely fantastic guys. So today I'm joined by Pat Dunford of Across the Bifrost and Arun Collier from Web Warrior Protocols. Pat, Arun, how are you both doing? Excellent. Yeah, I'm pretty good. We were just talking, weren't we? I have my league game in less than 12 hours, sort of 10 and a half hours, something like that. So that will be interesting. But I am used to getting up late going to bed late and getting up early as I have kids. So yeah, hopefully I should be okay. Guys, I thought we would start with just talking about the weekend we had because we've all just been at the same event, the Spring into Marvel, run by Tony Moore from Element War Games, or Element Gaming Centre, whatever it's called. And I just wanted to first of all give Tony a shout out because I think, and I'm sure you guys will agree, what a fantastic event that he run. I've never seen prize support like it. The prize support that he had on was brilliant. Obviously, Element's a great gaming centre, plenty of space there. But Pat, obviously you won the overall event. You actually played both me and Aaron. So you beat Aaron in one of the games, and then I think me and you played in the final, which was weird because it was just kind of the way that it worked out that was the final. But what were your sort of highlights of the weekend?
It's awesome to see more people in the MCP community and to see the game growing. And that was really enhanced by some of the things that Tony did to build the community. I really appreciated that he had prizes for painting, that he had prizes for people bringing down their own terrain and tables, and even a costume competition as well, right? That stuff really added to the event and made it feel much more like a community effort.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I thought it was really good. Aaron, we didn't get to play each other, so that is another event where we've been at and we didn't get to play. We've currently played in one event together. It's either you're too good or I'm not good enough. I'm not entirely sure what it is that means that we never play. But what were your takeaways from the weekend?
Yeah, it was a really good event. There were a couple of odd things with the scoring, which a few people pointed out. The atmosphere was absolutely great, and the prize support was just phenomenal. And some of the prizes, like Thor's hammer made out of Lego, and I think Pat, you had an Infinity Gauntlet of some kind, didn't you?
Yeah, very proud to get that. It's
Yeah, so
especially appropriate considering how often I was playing Thanos that weekend.
yeah, definitely. So there was some awesome prize support. Obviously, Tony did the best board as well, which was really great. We had some great boards from James Chalmers and Marcus, who bought the collector board and the pinball board and the murder board and basically half the boards that were there. And then best dressed obviously went to Nigel because that's just how he dresses apparently. So yeah, it was just a great weekend and lots of good little fun prizes as well.
Yeah, there really was, and I think as you said, the price support was really good, and just the whole. For me, Aaron, I think it was the same for you as well. It was my first ever 2-day event, and it was really weird because going into it, and I looked back before we jumped on this call just to see who was at the event and how they sat in the world of Longshanks rankings and that sort of thing. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that Longshanks rankings is the be all and end all and anything else, but it does give you an indication as to the level of the player. And I think something like 20 of the top 50 players globally, according to Longshanks, were at the event. So not only was it you know a really competitive event, it was I think the biggest we've had in the UK so far with 60 players. Some of the best players from not just the UK but from the world, but yet every table you went to, every conversation you had with somebody, for the most part, was very positive. There were really good vibes for, as I say, for the most part, coming from the entire gaming hall. And listening to people talk after the games, breaking down what they did, speaking to other people. It just felt like a really, really nice environment. And for me, that was great as a first timer going to, as I said, for me, the most competitive event I've been to, and one that was so big and over 2 days as well. Aaron, I don't know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, definitely. So the atmosphere was great. As you said, there were lots of really, really good players there. It was definitely not a walk in the park. There was some really stiff competition and some games that, came down to the very last dice roll, and people definitely knew what they were doing. And it was great that people were. I mean, as you said, I've not really done a 2-day event before, and sometimes I think in a competitive scene you get people being a little bit more offish with people and not really conversing with them after the games. But it seemed to me like everyone was just having a laugh and getting on with everyone and getting to know people, and that's what made it such a good event. I met loads of people that I had no idea who they were.
It's really weird. So one of the standout games for me, obviously we all played 7 games over the weekend, but I eventually got to play Marcus Gill, if you guys know him. Aaron, you mentioned him earlier. Put some amazing boards together. Marcus has supported me in charity events. I played him during the 28-hour event that I did. He's actually just he's not public knowledge yet, but he's just donated one of his boards for the charity quiz that we're doing, as well as a giveaway prize. So I've played with him online many times. I've been to loads of events that he's been at, but again, never played him. So I think my second or third game was against Marcus. And to your point, Aaron, it was so nice to actually be able to stand across the table and play a game. Because whilst TTS bridges a gap and allows us to play more games and get more reps in, the real nice thing about this game is being able to shake your opponent's hand and have a drink with them afterwards and sit down and converse and chat. And Pat, I saw you doing that throughout the event with various people. So I gather you're of a similar opinion as well. Don't want to put words into your mouth, but...
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's the best thing about these multi-day events is you have more time to meet people, right? And I want to thank so much people that made the effort to come and introduce themselves to me. It's awesome. And it's just really great. We have that time, before the games start, after the games finish, we have all evening and then the morning of the next day. So you get to know people a lot better and it really builds the community.
Yeah, 100%. And as you say, that social aspect of it as well was also really, really nice. I know we sort of divvied off into different groups, didn't we? But I think in reality, 60 of us converging on a single restaurant in Stockport wasn't likely, I don't think, especially on a Saturday evening. I don't think there's a single restaurant in Stockport that has 60 seats. So I know you guys went off for a nice meal somewhere. A few of us, Aaron, you came with me. We all went for a Chinese, didn't we? And again, it was just...
We went for a very long walk that ended in a Chinese.
We went for a very long walk that ended in us just seeking refuge in the first building we thought could house us. So yeah, that was really good. So yeah, so big. I don't know if he's watching, but he'll probably watch it at some point. But a big shout out to Tony. I think it was really good. And as you guys have said, yeah, massive shout out to I suppose everyone that was there really, just to make it such an enjoyable event. I want to talk a little bit, guys, about the current state of the game and where we think it is at the moment. We've obviously had quite a big introduction with the sort of latest releases with grunts. Obviously, some brand new mechanics to the game, which is always good. I love to see new mechanics come to the game. It keeps it fresh, keeps it alive. But it was really strange to look at people's lists, look at the number of people that were taking Thanos in their lists. He seems to have had a big resurgence of late. But yeah, just sort of general thoughts on where the game is at the moment, how competitive you think it is, whether you think it's going to change much over the next couple of months. But Pat, I'll go over to yourself first, sort of where you think it is at the moment.
So my takeaway from the weekend, there's a lot of diversity in the game. We had a really nice mix of people playing lots of different affiliations and lots of different characters inside of those affiliations. So I think that's very positive and that's very healthy. Grunt's a really interesting new addition, and it's probably a little bit too early to draw conclusions on them. At least I'm not willing to draw conclusions on them yet. it was very encouraging to see some people playing all of the grunt characters this weekend. There was one person playing nothing but shield, and a couple of people playing with Shadowlands Daredevil, a couple of people playing with Elektra, and they all seemed to have quite good success, but they had by no means flooded the event. So it remains to be seen, I think, just how successful grunts are in future.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, isn't it? And it will take time, I think, as all new mechanics do, as all new affiliations do as well. I think it was Alan Gibb, wasn't it, who took Shield, and I think ended up going, was it 5-2 in the end?
Yeah, pretty
So
sure
for
we do.
Very good.
Yeah, so for a first outing with a brand new affiliation, what a great. So I think by default he is now the highest ranked Shield player on on Longshanks. But yeah, Aaron, what about yourself? What's your thoughts on where the game is at the moment, where it's going? Are you excited about the direction that it's going in?
I'm definitely excited to see some of the things that we have on the horizon. We haven't officially heard a lot of things at the minute, have we? But I have my sources. I have people telling me some of the things that we might be getting, and it looks like it's going to be really cool. Some of the releases that may or may not be on the horizon. In terms of grunts, I'm personally not a fan. That's just because I'm a hater, though. It's just because I don't like grunts in general. Other than that, though, yeah, it's odd seeing Thanos show up everywhere. He's everywhere in quite a few different rosters at the minute. I'm just glad that people have stopped playing Web Warriors because there was a point where everyone was playing them and I was just getting hate for playing them and I was like, I've been doing this the whole time. Now it was good. I was the only one in the top 10 at the summit with them. People aren't screaming about them anymore. Everyone's moaning about Thanos, so I don't mind him taking away some of the heat at all.
Yeah, it was.
Thanos is. Sorry,
Pat,
Rich,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say
No,
Thanos
Pat,
is
go ahead,
definitely
yeah.
enemy number one right now, isn't he?
Yeah. Public enemy number one for sure. I mean, last night, every Tuesday at Boardingbroom, we have quite a lot of people down. I think we had 8 games going at one point last night, just casual games to sort of show up and play. And there was just Slatch walking around, and he just looked utterly lost. And I was like, Slatch, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, I'm not playing Thanos ever again. And I was like, where did Thanos touch his Slatch? So definitely having some impact on the game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think he's a real big piece, and it was quite strange. Everyone was talking about Space Mine Thanos, and that was the future. And I think in Black Order, it is, but only because Thanos really has to give up that reality gem to Corvus, because you ain't taking Corvus with anything else, and you're not taking him without it. But Thanos with that reality gem, man, it is crazy what he can do with it, and just the amount of damage he can soak up. I was fortunate; I only came against him twice. One against an actual Black Order game, and I can't really complain about that because I think round 3 I'd actually tabled the Black Order player, which you don't do very often. But I got quite lucky with some dice rolls and things, and then obviously Pat against yourself in the final game, and he just would not be moved. Just no chip damage, all the sort of chip damage that you used to get, that you get with Guardians, whether it's from Lovable Misfits or an explosion here or anything else, and he just negates all of that chip damage, and then getting those however many sides of the dice as a success with the reality gem. He does feel very, very good at the moment.
Yeah, he is very strong, and I agree with you that reality on him is superb. To illustrate what you mean about him negating chip damage, I think it's something like a 40% chance for a 5 dice attack to do no damage to Thanos with the reality gem.
Yeah.
And that's before you throw in stuff like cover or re-rolls from your leadership, so it can get much harder than that. And it just means that small attacks often are just not worth making into him. You have to save up for the big ones. But his stamina pool is high enough that it's going to take more than one of those, generally speaking, to take him down. So very resilient. And of course, his damage output is really good as well. One of the things that I think is secretly amazing about the reality gem is it generates more power for you than the power gem, because you do more damage with your strikes, and you just generate like an extra point or 2 of power every time you hit people, and you try and hit people twice around for the whole game. So you end up with more power generation, you can move more people around with portals, and you're doing more damage at the same time. It's very strong.
Yeah, I was at the receiving end of the portal movement That was obviously how you won the game in the end, wasn't it? There was a little glint in your eye when you realised what you could do, and a medium move, 2 moves, and then another medium move, and then another portal to move Star-Lord off. Not that it was needed, and an 18, I think, sorry, an 8 VP swing in a single round, and he just has that in his back. So, Aaron, when you've come up against Thanos of late, how have you dealt with him? Obviously, almost exclusively as a Web Warriors player. I know you've been dipping your toe in Spider Foes, and you believe you're going for Convocation next as your next affiliation that you're going to play. But yeah, how do you find what is the counter to Thanos? You know, what can you do against it?
So Thanos is a really interesting one because I don't think there is anything that specifically counters him in the sense that it's a rock paper scissors scenario. It's more that you have to accommodate the fact that you are going to be playing against him and deal with him. He still is 8 threat of your opponent's team. You know, 8 threat of my team, for example, would be Miles, Gwen, and Toad. So I do have sort of a little bit more diversity in the options that I'm provided with for that threat value. Of course, so Thanos can wait until the last activation of the round and Cosmic Portal everyone, or do 2 6-dice strikes counting the first colour as a crit, which is it's very impactful, obviously. So for the most part, I've found that trying to sort of push him away into a corner or get effects on him like stagger or slow or things that just slightly limit him and gradually build up the reduction to what he's able to do is the best way for me to deal with him. Hazing him is very difficult. KOing him's it's another beast entirely. As we've said, 40% chance of taking no damage from what would be your average attack. It's crazy. It makes it very hard to put down. I think if I really need him to not do something in a round, then I will try and focus him down. But generally, as he isn't really bothered by any chip damage, it is difficult to try and go toe-to-toe with him and take him out of the fight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Pat, as somebody who is now solidly on board and Team Thanos in his Guardians of the Galaxy roster, what advice could you give against somebody? And maybe I should have asked you this on Saturday before we played on Sunday, but what advice could you give against somebody coming up against Thanos? And I think in particular, Thanos outside of Black Order, because I do believe he is more potent outside than currently inside Black Order as in terms of what he does. So what sort of advice could you give people?
Yeah, I do agree with you that he may be better outside of Black Order than in. Also completely agree with Aaron that dazing and KOing him is not very practical. Over the course of the weekend, I didn't have Thanos flip once. He always remained on his healthy side, even when my opponents were making it their primary game plan to try and deal with him. But when you add his resilience, combined with his control, his mobility, and then defensive team tactics cards like Sacrifice and Med Pack on top of that, it's not really practical, I think, for most teams to try and beat him up. That said, there are some combos that you can use, so I do think that certain teams can look in that direction. And in particular, if you're a team that is very good at getting very high damage on particular activations going with priority, or if you have tactics cards that multiply damage. So examples would be things like Killmonger in Wakanda with Usurp the Throne, doing 3 very high damage attacks all at once, or something like Convocation using Plains of Poldark that lets you reroll all of your Mystic attacks into Thanos for a round, Cabal using Dark Rain to reroll all their attacks. I think there are some options if you want to try and damage him.
Yeah, I think there are. I do think people put them in this role. I know I have in the past put Thanos in the roster almost as a like. I do like him in Guardians because he does let me go tall a little bit, like like you've done in the past, Pat. But I think people are quite scared of him now when they see him in your roster, and I think people should probably plan some tech around it. As you say, some of the things that you mentioned there. I want to take a couple of we had a couple of questions for both of you guys before we started. So if it's okay, I'm gonna jump to a couple of them. Don't worry, Aaron. I'm going to ignore Quinn, as I tend to do for most cases. But a question from Bleach Orange was: who are your favourite characters that you struggle to play with on the board due to game mechanics? And Pat, I'll start off with yourself there. Not that I would ever expect you to struggle with the game mechanics, Pat, but are there characters in particular that maybe just don't suit your style of play, or you just never sort of found synergy with?
I have a little clarifying question here, Rich. When we say game mechanics, are we saying we don't like the mechanics and how they work? Like, I like this character, but I don't like how it plays? Or is this a polite way of saying a character who we don't think is very powerful?
I think you could take that question however you wish, Pat.
Okay. So, so I'm going to give a diplomatic answer because I had an answer for this that has changed since the weekend. And if you'd asked me before the weekend, which characters do you like playing with, but you're struggling to find an excuse to put on the table, I would have told you X-Men. Everyone loves the X-Men, and I do enjoy playing with the X-Men, but I've never bitten the bullet to take them to a competitive event. I only played them like in casual game nights. But after seeing Cahal this weekend go very, very well with an X-Men X-Force team, we ended up playing in the undefeated bracket, I think at 5-0.
Yes, I think it
So
was.
the
Yeah.
first game of the second day. And his team was great, and he played them really, really well. He used Storm's leadership exceptionally well, and it's become clear to me that now with the updates to their characters, right, the fact they've got Rogue, they've got X-23, Honey Badger, Magic, etc., etc., they've just got this really good list of really powerful affiliated characters. They're all bangers, and they do loads and loads of damage. So you can have very flexible teams with a damage focus. You can go wide, you can go tall. I think you can do a lot of stuff now with X-Men. So they were the team that I was less excited to play because of their mechanics, but that's completely changed since the weekend.
And I actually think all three of us played Cahal this weekend. So yeah, he did not have an easy run to the to the end of the tournament, but completely agree, Pat.
He played
he's
all on the second day, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he
played
did. I think he actually played me, then you, Pat, and then yourself, Aaron. But he blew me away with what he did. Those flips, those flip secures, really, really lend themselves to X-Men. And I think it just goes to show how close characters and affiliations are in this game, that it only takes one or two new characters, a 3-threat and a 2-threat to be introduced, and all of a sudden you can get value from that affiliation. So, for me, it's testament to the guys that designed the game, and it just shows that when we talk about best and worst, actually the curve is so close to each other that really anything is viable, and it only takes a tweak here or there for it to become way down at the bottom to all of a sudden meta. So yeah, shout out to Cahal. Not only a great sport, we had a really good game, but yeah, he's managed to turn the X-Men on. I've never seen anybody do it. Aaron, similar question to yourself. Are there any characters? I mean, you just play Web Warriors, so what are we going to say, Aaron? Are there any characters that you would love to play, but they just don't sort of fit in your play style?
So I think Carnage is probably the first model that comes to mind, because I love Carnage, and if there was a symbiote affiliation, that's probably what I'd be playing. Sadly, and I've been on about it for quite a while, I feel that 4-threat characters are in such a weird space at the minute, just because they've got to be better than the 3-threats. And if we look at the 3-threats now, there are so many different ones, especially in Web Warriors, we have so many powerful 3-threats. And then they're not quite as good as a 5-threat, but they are a 4. It just makes it really awkward. For me at least, to fit them in with team building, especially when I'm trying to go a little bit wider to match rosters like Sam Spam or traditional Guardians where they've got lots of models on the table. So although I do like the way that Carnage plays, sadly I do find myself having to skip out on him just because if I'm the only 4-threat I am taking at the minute is Venom, and although like I said, Carnage's toolkit and what he has access to is very strong, it's always going to be Venom over him for me. I mean, he's the number one symbiote in my eyes. I absolutely adore Venom. So, yeah, I think if anything, I'd like to get more table time out of Carnage, but I just struggle to fit him in.
I would agree. I think, positions in rosters for 4-threats, most affiliations now I feel have, at least for the most part, have a good, strong 4-threat that is your go-to. And as you say, Aaron, it takes a lot then to displace them. And the one that springs to my mind straight away is obviously Voodoo. We're seeing a lot of Voodoo at the moment. Didn't see him too much this weekend. I think I only played against him once, maybe twice at the absolute most, which again was refreshing. There's nothing worse than turning up and every single person is running, the same 9 characters and the same 9 cards, and then, one card and one character difference in their rosters. So it is nice when there's such variation. Question here, and it is specifically aimed at Pat, but Pat, are you bad at any game, or do you just naturally dominate? Is the question from Mr. Ryder, and 2 people have seconded that. So Pat, maybe because I know you are not one to gloat, but maybe are there any other games that you've picked up and tried to play in the past and gone, this is just not for me. I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, definitely. I've been playing games for a long time, right? Miniatures games, board games, card games, all kinds of games. And there's lots of games I love. Obviously, you can't be good at every game. But one thing I find as I play lots of games is that there's some lessons you learn that you can translate, right? So, for example, I recently started playing Mahjong with my mother-in-law. And I was quite good at Mahjong from the start because I was able to apply some of the lessons I knew from card games, right? In regards to things like counting cards and like predicting people's hands and that kind of thing. Like some of those skills are transferable. And because I've been playing miniatures games for so long, I was able to start off doing quite well at MCP, transferring some of those skills over. But yeah, there's tons of games that I'm bad at. Honestly, physical games in general, I suck. I'm no good at any sports. I try my best, but it's not to be. So, yeah, no one's good at everything.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And Aaron, this is a question that has been asked time and time again. Will you ever play in the TTS League again? We're coming to the latter stages of Season 7 now. I can't believe that on this call with you two, I'm the only one that's still in it. Like to me, that's crazy, but I will absolutely take it. But Aaron, do you plan on taking a look at it next season and maybe competing at all?
I think that there is a little bit of a divide at the minute between sort of the TTS community and the sort of, I should say, the in real life gaming community. So that puts me off a little bit, but mainly the biggest hurdle for me to jump over to get onto TTS is having a PC that can run it. Because my PC just conked out and died, man. My PC is dead as hell. So it just doesn't run it properly. I played ROM the other day and it nearly took off into the ceiling. That's how bad my computer is at the minute. So I think if I managed to sort something out that could run it at a reasonable sort of pace, then I'd definitely consider it. But it's not looking like something that's going to happen in the immediate future, to be honest.
No, that's fair enough. And I wanna touch on that point you just made because it is a nice easy segue into the sort of next part and maybe the sort of wrapping up piece that I do want to talk about, because there were some things that as I mentioned, the event of the weekend for the absolute most part was very, very good. There was zero animosity in the room for the most part. And I think everyone walked away from the event with zero animosity. And that's a really important thing, is that heat of the moment, things can happen, but having the character to then be able to resolve any issues that happen on or off the table and being able to walk away friends is I think really, really important. You guys may have seen I put a video out yesterday, not necessarily in response to what had happened at the weekend, because I don't actually think anything that bad happened this weekend at all. I think a lot of things were blown out of proportion. And I actually think that you guys were, although at the centre of one of the things, actually weren't contributing factors in it whatsoever, other than it was you two that was playing each other. And for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, Aaron and Pat, it's the first game you've ever played, isn't it? In real life or in TTS or anywhere else. And I think it's fair to say that people had been bigging this up for quite a while. Aaron, to your
Yes.
point, a divide in the community. Now, whether that's a north-south divide, not that I'd ever include you as a northern, Aaron, you're definitely a Midlander as far as I'm concerned. But
I'll stand alone.
whether it's TTS, whether it's north-south, but a divide of opinions and a divide of individuals, and maybe even look at it and say that, in the early days, maybe Longshanks was a divider of it in terms of those that were on it and those that weren't. But you two obviously got drawn. I think one of the things that didn't help is that it came out the night before. So the world knew that you two were playing each other in the morning. And obviously, Aaron, you got lots of messages. Pat, I know you mentioned you got messages and people rooting for you and that sort of thing. But I think in the past, and I know of examples, and I won't go into specifics, that has maybe boiled over a little bit. And never by you two guys, but by other people almost on your behalf. Whether that's defending the fact that you shouldn't be calling Aaron the best player in the world because Pat's a better player and everything else. And I know neither of you guys want that. That's not what either of you want from the game. But I just thought it was worth bringing up this idea of this. It was a term I'd never heard until Marcus mentioned it. This idea of a social contract between players. Especially when you stand in front of somebody or sit across from them on a table. Yes, you're there and you want to win. But there's winning, and then there's winning at all costs, and somebody walking away from that not feeling good about it. And I just wanted to have a conversation around that. My thoughts are very, very clear on it. I think I'm much in the camp of how most of my game, in fact, how all of my games went this weekend, which was we were competitive, but I would, letter of the law is the wrong word, but I wouldn't try and mislead. There were no mind games. I wouldn't try to get under my opponent's skin. Any of those sort of off the table, outside of the game activities. So that's a bit of a rant there. But Pat, over to yourself there. What are your thoughts, and what are your thoughts on what it is for each player as sort of their own responsibility when they're in the game, not just to the game itself, but then to each other as players? How important is that?
Oh, I think it's critically important. The social contract in the game is huge, right? And my understanding of the social contract, in case it's not clear to anyone, is the point is gaming face-to-face like that is a social experience. And when you turn up to the table to face your opponent, you have this unspoken, unwritten contract that you are going to play with them, right? You're going to engage with them, and together you're going to create a fun experience for you both to enjoy. And that's the social contract, right? I expect my opponent to make the game fun for me. I'll try and make it fun for you. And sportsmanship plays a critical part in that, especially when you get to a more competitive event like this one. You maybe can't go as far as you might in a casual game to make it fun, but you can be just as sure that you'll play clean, you'll play fair, and that you'll be a good sport to your opponent.
Yeah, 100% could not agree more. Aaron, I know we've spoke about this already, but what are your thoughts? How do you approach a game? And if you could actually, if you wouldn't mind sharing one of the examples you spoke to me about this weekend, because I think it's really, really important that even in a competitive setting, some players are going to be playing at different levels, and some players are going to be playing far more competitive than others. And I think that's a really important thing to try and understand. But Aaron, first of all, what are your thoughts on it? And then second of all, if you wouldn't mind sharing that example that you share with me at the weekend, that'd be really good.
So my thoughts on it are that, quite frankly, it baffles me the way that some people choose to act during these events. I was saying to Pat after our game on Sunday that this is the first time I've ever played competitively, really, in any game system. I mean, I did a few events for Lord of the Rings, but it was like, what was it called? The one where it's more like most sporting and best painted base for your scoring and whatnot. But Marvel was really first game that I've played super competitively, and I think the fact that some people genuinely consider almost psyching your opponent out as a valid tactic. It's just baffling. I think that you should approach each game the same. Approach it being respectable, first of all, both to yourself and to your opponent. Because all you're going to do is make yourself look like an idiot. If you show up and start acting like a goon, you're just going to look like an idiot, and everyone's going to know you're an idiot. So I think it's important to be respectable for yourself and your opponent, and be fair for your opponent. And sort of have that conversation if need be about the type of game you're looking to play. I mean, some people, yeah, they want a whole. You put the model down, you've not touched it, proper chess style. That's it, done. And then other people, which are the people that I think are doing it a lot closer to how it's intended to be, are the people that will say, I want this model to end within range 1, and that sort of declare their intent, and then both players know clearly where the model is meant to be. You told me about an example in your and Pat's game where you thought Star-Lord had been nudged or something. But the understanding from both players was that he was meant to be within range 1, so then for all intent and purposes, he is within range 1 because it's a given variable that occasionally models get knocked. You know what I mean? They're little toy soldiers on a table, it's going to happen. So I think making sure your opponent is aware of how you intend to play the game, and being consistent more than anything, making sure that when rule doesn't mean anything to you, you treat it the same as if it's going to be game-changing to you. I mean, the best example is a re-roll. So if your opponent says, "Oh, I forgot to do my re-roll on my attack," it shouldn't matter whether that attack is going to just do 1 damage or whether it's going to die as a character. I think you should play it completely the exact same, not dependent on the scenario that you're in at any given time. Because then you're not playing fairly. It's a huge bias, and you're actually what you're essentially saying is, yeah, I'd let you off, but not in this case because it's going to be detrimental to me. So just be fair, be consistent, and be respectful. I think that's the most important thing.
I really, really like that point, Aaron, because it's really easy to say that, oh no, I'm carefree when I'm playing games and I'll let somebody re-roll, or, they'll add they've exploded the crits and then they realise that they're holding a hammer, right? That's one that catches me out all the time.
Yeah.
I'm holding a hammer, and all that kind of stuff. It's one thing, if you're doing it against a Hulk who's taken no damage and you've already rolled 4 successful blocks, it's really easy to say it then because there's no detriment to you. But to your point, Aaron, applying those same rules across the board all of the time, I think is really, really important. And I really, really do like that point. And to your point, yeah, Pat, I mean, I think there was two instances in that game that we played. The first one was Little Misfits, where I completely forgot Groot had no power. I declared I was playing the card, got to Groot, and sort of realised, I had the complete opposite look that you had when you realised Thanos could win you the game. I realised I'd made a grave error. But, the fact that you turned around and went, well, Rich, it's fine, just take it back. Like, nothing had happened. I get if I'd have rolled, I'd have rolled for Star-Lord and got something, and rolled for Rocket and got nothing, and then gone, oh no, Groot, I would never expect to take back at that point. But I think until something else has happened, then I'm okay with that. Like, I'm absolutely okay. My opponent says I'm going to activate XYZ character and I'm going to move up to here. Actually, I don't know. Let me think about that. No, I'm going to go with this character. Like, yeah, of course, you let them activate that other character because, again, it goes to that thing of both players walking away, win, lose, or indeed draw if it's a dice down after an hour and 45 minutes. People walk away from the game feeling good about themselves, feeling like they've had a nice game, and enthused to come back and play the game again. And I think that's really important because we are a growing community, and I think we have to be really careful that we don't let bad practices seep into the game. I've seen it in other gaming, other games in the past. Pat, I'm sure you've seen it in other gaming platforms that you've played as well. And I think there's a responsibility for everyone, not just whether you're, ranked number 1 and 2 in the world, whether you're, 94% win rate, whether you've run a YouTube channel or whatever else. I think everyone as a community has a right, has a responsibility to make sure that we make players feel welcome, make sure that they feel like they're enjoying the game. One of the things I've started doing whenever anybody runs Sacrifice that I've never met before is I have a conversation with them and say, do you know how Sacrifice works? Because it just seems to be the one card that nobody seems to know how it works. I don't know if it's the bad wording on it or what, but
It is quite funny.
it really is. It's like you can't add dice yourself, but other people can add dice for you. So yeah, it does catch a lot of people out. So I always make sure that my opponent, understands my roster, but also understands their roster as well. And if my first game, I think in the league, or maybe even second game, I spoke to the guy, shook his hand, and he went, "This is my 4th game of Marvel Crisis Protocol." And I was like, right, okay. Well, you're playing Brotherhood. I've played a little bit of Brotherhood, so I'm going to talk you through this. So I was reminding him about, you've just destroyed a building, you get to give out power, magnetic refraction, that stays up when Magneto's dazed, even though he's dazed, and those sorts of things that, yes, in a final pat against you, if you didn't roll your, change your cover, I would tell you about it still, because for me, both players still have a responsibility to manage that game and play it fairly. And walking away, if I'd have won on a technicality, and I'm sure you guys are the same, does it really feel like a win? And for me, I know it doesn't really. A few people asking like, what caused the conversation for a social contract? I think it's just a number of things, Chewy. I think it was definitely a topic of conversation this weekend, throughout the weekend. I know there was a couple of instances where there's been discussed. So we just thought it would be a good thing to talk about. Anything,
Rich? Just
yeah,
to add to that point, sorry. I think one of the reasons it comes up is because this is one of the first big meetups we've had for MCP in the UK, right? And I know that other countries are doing this. I know a lot of other places are starting to have their first big conventions, and the US has had its first big conventions this year, right? And when you have this new community that has mostly been playing in small groups and online, you don't yet have kind of like social norms around the game, right? You don't have a shared understanding of what are sporting things to do, what are the best ways to interact with your opponent. And that can create these misunderstandings, right? And most arguments or conflicts in the game just come from two people with different expectations, right? In regards to how they should play and how they should communicate. And I think that's why this conversation that you're leading is so important, because it helps us to unite and set a good example so that we can improve in this area and everyone can enjoy themselves more.
Couldn't agree more, Pat. Aaron, any final thoughts from yourself? We are coming up to sort of almost the hour mark, so we don't want to keep you guys for much longer. But
I was just going to say, I think another part of the social contract is don't let anyone else write that contract for you. So I was saying to Pat after our game that everyone had made out there was this big beef between me and Pat. So I sort of had gone into the game with my back up a little bit, thinking, oh, this guy doesn't like me, there's some kind of problem, it's all really... And then it turns out it wasn't. Pat was lovely to play. And I'd let that build up into a whole thing, and it just really wasn't. And I think it's important to sort of acknowledge that sometimes people on the internet are just people on the internet. And that, again, the social contract is between the two players. It's not about what the people around you are saying or shouting. And I think that's the biggest thing I learnt this weekend, was to go into a game and not have any sort of like pre-made ideas about how a certain opponent's going to be from what I've heard, and just go into it and make my own judgment and play the game how I want to play the game and how I'd play it against anyone else. More than anything.
100%, Aaron. And I got a few people messaging me directly off the back of the video that I did yesterday, saying, well, I don't agree with you completely. In our casual games, we don't do take backs. We don't do that. And that is absolutely fine. To your point, Aaron, you set your own rules within your own groups. But when we get into this wider world, Pat, to your point, it's important that we don't have somebody here and somebody here. So whether that's a conversation that needs to happen at the beginning of the game, whatever it may be, but somebody who is here And I don't mean playing at this level, as in like they're a bad player, they don't play well, but somebody who is, of course you can, mate. Yeah, roll your extra dice or take that back, not a problem. Versus somebody here who is actually, the corner of that character just touched the base and therefore it needs to go down and there is nothing you can do about it. And it may be that those two sort of groups of people need to meet in the middle a little bit. And I think that's what this is about. It's about making sure you've got the right balance in the right setting against the right player. And Aaron, you'd never shared it actually. Can you share that story that you shared with me from the not this weekend gone, but you shared it with me this weekend about one of the first time players you had at an event. You knew that he'd not played well.
Oh yeah.
Not played well, but how he came away from that, absolutely loving it.
So I won't obviously name anyone at all, but basically, I played a guy that I've known for a while that was not long getting into Marvel, and he was sort of quite new to the rules, and as a result of this, if I'd have wanted it to be, it would have been like 16-0, good game, I've beat you, that's it. But I didn't want that, and I don't think anyone should ever aim for that. I think, realistically, you can tell sometimes going into a game when one person really doesn't know what they're doing, and you know yourself that you know your game plan in and out, the way that game's going to go. So, rather than just smash this guy, take the 16-0 win, go out, and spend an hour and a half waiting around for the next round to start, I made sure that through what I was doing and through the way I was explaining it and playing the game, that the game actually ended something like 16-14 to me. So I still got the win, which is, I suppose, ultimately what each player wants each round. And, that's what I obviously want going to a tournament, because that's what we're playing to do. We're playing to win the rounds. Rather than it being a 16-0 miserable game, we came away from that game and my opponent was like, oh, that was a really good game. I really enjoyed that. This is like, does anyone else sort of do that well against you? And I was like, no, I was like, you've played it really solid, like everything you've done was sound. And obviously I'd helped somewhat, but I think then moving forward, every time I see him, he's like, oh, do you remember when we had that game? And I was like, yeah, and you played your Spider Foes and it was really close and it was a really great game. And for him, that meant an awful lot, whereas to me, it's, like I said, I could have just smashed him, but I think as competitive players, it's important to not just do that, because all you're going to do is ruin someone's first tournament or ruin someone's first run out with an affiliation, and I think it's really naff to do that to people more than anything. So, I think that's the story you were on about, Rich.
It is, so, and I think the important thing in that for me, Aaron, is that was a competitive event. That was a ranked event with, with prize support and everything else. And I think it goes back to that point of, even within a competitive setting, you can come up against different players, and as more competitive players, and as, I don't want to say the word higher skilled players, because that sounds like I'm belittling anybody else, but some, people who have got tens, sometimes hundreds of games in with different affiliations, we need to be able to adjust our game to accommodate for that as well. Couple of questions that we've had. Richard Brown says, do you think that having so many previous WMH War Machine? Is that what that is?
War Machine and Hordes,
yeah.
So okay. I know the link.
There we go. Bring over that sort of... So basically, do you think they will bring over a hyper-competitiveness that was found in that game? I never played that game, so I can't speak to it. Pat, I believe you did.
I did indeed. I played it for a long time. So I think... I mean, it's possible. I think it really comes down to the person, their attitude, more than the game. As we discussed already, I've played a bunch of different games, and I don't think a game necessarily breeds a certain kind of player, but rather different people treat games in different ways, and some are very competitive, and some are very friendly, and then most people fall somewhere in the middle, right? So I think this goes back to what I said before, which is just be aware that we're a newer community, we're growing, and we're adopting people from all over the gaming spectrum, right? I think it's awesome, Aaron, that this is your first competitive miniatures game, right? I think that's fantastic. And I think that's a great example to compare against someone that's come with years of experience from a different game. And you're going to have different expectations and you're going to play in different ways. But I don't think War Machine and Hordes had a negative community at all in regards to how it played. I think it was very sporting. But I think anyone that comes from one game to another just needs to tread a little bit lightly and make sure they're going in with an open mind.
Completely agree. Guys, I think we're gonna, unless either of you have anything else you want to add into the mix or talk about, I think we will leave it there. I think my sort of parting thoughts to everyone will be is just take note of who you're playing against. I think that's one of the most important things. Understand, ask them questions, and if you find out that it's their first ever tournament and they've been playing for 2 months and they've only ever had 5 games previously, do something about it, right? Mm-hmm. Help them through with it, talk them through with it, because you know what, you're probably going to win the game anyway, but you may as well walk away from that game having helped another player, and more importantly, retaining another player to this game as well, because that's really, really important. So Pat, Aaron, thank you to both of you for joining me. Aaron, as always, it was good to catch up this weekend. Nice to actually spend some social time. Pat, nice to eventually meet you in person, and even better to play you in person as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't go 2-0 against the ATB crew. It was not to be. You got vengeance for TT, so that was really good. But I really enjoyed the weekend. I would highly, highly recommend anyone who is worried about going to their first event, if you're turning up and you are worried or you're thinking about it, have a look at who else is going. Right? If it's me, if it's Pat, if it's Aaron, if it's Quinn, if it's Kahal, anybody from the community, reach out to them and ask them and speak to them before you go to the event if you've got any questions, any concerns, any worries, because we've got an amazing community, not just in the UK but globally, of MCP. It's growing, and we want to continue that growth, and we want to continue this very positive gaming experience that people are having. So yeah. Pat, where can people find you? Not your address. Sorry, not your address. Sorry, just to clarify.
So you can find my weekly podcast, Across the Bifrost, on the Across the Bifrost Nexus, which is acrossthebifrost.com. And along with that, there's obviously tons of other great content by lots of different content creators, some competitive, some casual. So I'd encourage everyone to check that out.
Fantastic. And I can testify it is a great resource for anyone new, young, old, experienced, to go there. Check out the ATB Nexus. I post all of my videos on there as well. It's a great repository for all things MCP, and there's definitely things for every level of player in there as well. Aaron, where can people find you?
So you can find me mainly at my website, which is webwarriorprotocols.com. I'm under that tag on Facebook as well, and I think it's that on Twitter. I do pop up on other things like occasionally podcasts. I know me and Pat are planning to team up soon to do a episode together, and I am even looking at joining the Across the Bifrost Nexus as well, and having my post on there as well, which is going to be great. So yeah, you'll see me popping up a little bit more hopefully in the future, and I've just set up my Patreon as well, so it's all going off at the minute. Don't
be pitching your Patreon on my channel. You've already... I'm only joking. Guys, go and check out their content. There's some really, really good stuff out there. And actually, guys, whilst I have them both here, I have to mention, because I have to do it, and you guys are probably getting bored of this by now, but we have our big charity event happening on the 23rd of April. It's going to be an MCP themed quiz. Both Aaron and Pat are going to be guests. I don't know what the term is, like, not guest presenters, but question masters, maybe. I'm not sure. But they've both...
That sounds terrible.
It does a little bit, yeah. But they have both offered up their services as a prize, because we wanted some money can't buy prizes. So both Pat and Aaron have offered up a one-to-one coaching session. So during the event, we're going to have some spot prizes. The question that Aaron writes, whoever wins that question, they'll win the one that Aaron does, and same with Pat. But you'll get to spend some one-to-one time with Pat or Aaron. You'll build a roster together. You'll go through some decision making around what makes a good roster, what threat curve should you be looking at, and then you'll play a game together, and you will be coached throughout that entire game by Pat and Aaron. So to you two guys, thank you for supporting my endeavours. I do ask a lot from our community, but they're usually pretty good when I do reach out and ask. So yeah, if you want to check out details of that, go check out the Discord, go check out the Facebook page. All of the details are on there, and hopefully we can see lots of you on the 23rd of April.
Quickly,
fire away, Aaron.
Quickly to add on to what you're saying about the charity quiz as well. Some people might have seen that between myself, Tony Moore, and John from Bobo, we're running a series of events called the Infinity Series. So these are going to be 6 events, which each will be registered as a championship event on Longshanks, so you can go out and collect the various Infinity Gems. And we have decided between us all as well to donate free tickets to every single one of the events as part of the prizes for that quiz. So you'll have a chance of winning a ticket to the 2 events that I'll be hosting at Boarding Brum, the 2 that Tony will be hosting at Element Games, and the 2 that John will be hosting up in Nottingham. So they're all up for grabs as well as part of the quiz.
It is a fantastic prize, and what I've done with that, Aaron, is I've actually bundled that together. So that's going to be a single prize with entry to all 6 events. So you can go and collect all 6 Infinity Gems, which will be, it's an absolutely amazing prize. So shout out to you guys for that as well. Guys, and with that, we will leave it there. So, Pat, thank you once again for your time. Again, absolute pleasure to meet you this weekend, and an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. Aaron, I only jest. Always great to meet up, mate. Always great to have you on the channel. Thank you to everyone that watched. And guys, we will catch